Most people assume that when the power goes out, the first thing they'll miss is light. They're wrong. What you'll really miss is heat, not the comfortable kind you barely notice when your home is functioning normally. I mean the kind that keeps your fingers moving, your food edible, and your body alive when the temperature drops and the electrical grid suddenly becomes a memory. And here's where a strange secret from Japan enters the story. Because while much of the modern world became obsessed with bigger heaters, more fuel, and more complicated systems, generations of Japanese craftsmen quietly perfected something almost absurdly simple: extracting every possible degree of heat from a handful of wood. Imagine waking up after a massive blackout: no electric heater, no natural gas, no delivery trucks, no fuel stations. Outside, the cold feels like a living thing pressing against the walls. Most people immediately start making the same mistake. They burn large pieces of wood in open fires, watching beautiful flames consume valuable fuel at an astonishing rate. The problem is that flames look impressive, but survival isn't about appearances. Survival is about efficiency. The Japanese discovered centuries ago that controlling airflow matters more than creating giant fires. A carefully designed wood stove can transform a small pile of sticks into hours of usable heat. The science is surprisingly straightforward. Fire requires oxygen, fuel, and heat. Most traditional fires waste enormous amounts of energy because hot gases escape before their heat can be transferred to anything useful. A properly designed stove slows this escape, allowing more combustion and better heat transfer. In simple terms, less wood produces more warmth. What makes this particularly fascinating is that many Japanese stove designs evolved in environments where resources were limited. When fuel is scarce, every mistake becomes expensive. Every unnecessary spark is lost energy. This mindset created a culture of thermal efficiency, long before engineers started using those words. Instead of asking how to build bigger fires, the question became, how do we force the fire to give us everything it has before the heat disappears into the air? Now picture a post-collapse scenario. Roads are blocked, supply chains are broken, stores are empty. Suddenly the ability to heat a room using fallen branches becomes more valuable than a garage full of expensive gadgets. One of the secrets lies in fuel preparation. Most people think wood is wood. Not even close. Freshly cut wood can contain an astonishing amount of water. Before that wood can heat you, the fire must first boil away that moisture. You're literally burning fuel to dry fuel. That's energy theft happening right in front of your eyes. Dry wood burns hotter, cleaner, and longer because its energy goes toward producing heat instead of producing steam. This is why experienced survivalists often sound obsessed with seasoning wood. They're not being picky. They're protecting calories, time, and resources. And here's something nobody tells you. In a true emergency, the stove itself becomes more important than the fuel. You can have an entire forest available and still freeze if your system wastes energy. This is one reason compact vertical combustion designs became so respected among survival communities. By forcing flames and hot gases through narrow pathways, combustion becomes more complete. The smoke decreases, the temperature increases, the fuel consumption drops. What looks like a tiny fire can outperform a much larger open flame because physics doesn't care about appearances. Physics rewards efficiency. There's another layer to this story that becomes terrifyingly important during long-term disasters. Heat is not only about comfort. Heat is hydration. Heat is sanitation. Heat is food safety. Once a stove reaches cooking temperature, it becomes a survival multiplier. Water can be purified. Soups can be prepared from ingredients that would otherwise be difficult to digest. Frozen supplies can be thawed. Even simple hot drinks dramatically improve morale. That might sound insignificant until you've spent several days cold, exhausted, and uncertain. Human psychology changes when warmth disappears. Decision-making worsens. Motivation drops. Small problems begin feeling impossible. A reliable heat source doesn't just warm your body. It stabilizes your mind. The Japanese approach to heating also embraced another survival principle that modern societies often forget: heating people instead of heating space. This sounds obvious, but it's revolutionary. In many traditional settings, rather than trying to warm an entire structure, heat was concentrated where people actually lived and worked. During a prolonged emergency, this concept becomes incredibly powerful. Heating one room requires a fraction of the energy needed to heat an entire house. Every square meter you don't heat becomes fuel saved for tomorrow. And tomorrow matters because most survival situations last longer than expected. Think about how quickly fuel disappears during winter. A family might begin with confidence, staring at what looks like a mountain of firewood. Then a week passes, another storm arrives. Temperatures remain low. Suddenly that mountain becomes a hill. Then the hill becomes a pile. Resource consumption often follows a psychological illusion. Humans are terrible at estimating long-term use rates. The Japanese stove philosophy quietly counters this problem by stretching every unit of fuel as far as possible. The less wood you consume today, the greater your margin for survival next month. Something else happens when combustion becomes cleaner. Smoke decreases. This isn't merely convenient, it's strategic. Smoke represents unburned fuel particles escaping into the atmosphere. Every cloud of smoke is wasted energy floating away. In certain emergency situations, excessive smoke can also advertise your location from considerable distances. Cleaner combustion means greater efficiency and less visibility. Ancient wisdom and modern survival logic end up reaching the same conclusion through different paths. Now, let's talk about one of the most overlooked survival dangers: carbon monoxide. Fire has always been both humanity's greatest ally and one of its deadliest enemies. A poorly ventilated heating system can fill an enclosed space with an odorless gas capable of causing confusion, unconsciousness, and death. The irony is brutal. The thing keeping you warm can quietly kill you if you don't respect combustion science. Efficient stove design must always be paired with proper ventilation and safety awareness. Survival isn't about copying techniques blindly. It's about understanding why they work and what risks accompany them. What's remarkable is that many traditional heating systems survived for centuries because failure carried immediate consequences. Designs weren't preserved because they were fashionable. They were preserved because they kept people alive through winters, shortages, and uncertainty. Every generation refined what worked and discarded what didn't. In a sense, these stoves became physical archives of survival knowledge.